Hello, welcome to this training video on removal as part of the Corporate Net Zero Standard version 2 public consultation. My name is Piera Patrizo and I'm the Head of Research at the Science Based Targets Initiative. In this video, I'll be walking you through the key updates in relation to residual emission and removals. Please note that this overview is not exhaustive and many of the details will be explored further during the public consultation. If you have feedback, please use the consultation channel available on our website. The draft standard proposes two approaches for consultation to address residual emission prior to the net zero target year. Through interim removal targets, which will be either required or an option for which company can receive additional recognition, and through additional abatement or removals. The draft standard also introduces minimum durability requirement for removal in the lead up to the net zero target year, with two options to determine minimum durability to be explored in consultation. Importantly, there are two additional updates. In the net zero target year, neutralization is required for both Scope 1 and Scope 3 residual emission, assuming there are no Scope 2 residuals. Neutralization of Scope 3 emission might be addressed by value chain partners. Finally, removals are required to adhere to high integrity criteria, which will be further defined during the consultation process. Each of the key updates to the standard address challenges that surfaced with its research phase and from stakeholder feedback. The first challenge refers to the lack of near-term incentive to accelerate deployment of removals. The update helps by providing option for company to gradually increase removal over time prior to the net zero target year. The second challenge refers to a potential low supply of durable removal in the near term. Hence, the draft standard provides one option for company to choose increased Scope 1 reduction in lead up to net zero in lieu of removals. It also provides two options to establish minimum durability requirement for removal, one of which assumes that there is a gradual increase of the share of durable removal in lead up to net zero. The third challenge refers to the fact that neutralization for Scope 3 emissions might put an outside burden on reporting company to purchase removals. To address this challenge, the draft standard proposes that Scope 3 residual emission might be addressed by value chain partner or by reporting company. Finally, the last challenge referred to the lack of clear integrity criteria for removals, and hence, minimum quality criteria will be introduced through expert working group discussion and consultation. Before diving into the content of this video, it is useful to recap key definitions that are used throughout the standard and also available at the SBTi glossary on our website. The first important term is residual emission, which refer to the company emission that remain at and after the year the long-term emission reduction target has been achieved. This represents emission that cannot be eliminated despite implementing all available mitigation measures that are contemplated in pathways that limit warming to 1.5 with no or limited overshoot. Removals are action that sequester CO2 from the atmosphere and durably store it in geological, terrestrial, or ocean reservoir, or in products. Importantly, the storage of removal can vary in durability. Neutralization refers to the measure company take to counterbalance residual emission through removal at and after the net zero target year. Interim removal are removal that company used in the lead up to the net zero target year to proactively address residual emission. Finally, ongoing emission are emission occurring from the target base year before the net zero target year. Company might receive additional recognition for addressing ongoing emission through beyond value chain mitigation. The draft sets out two sets of options to be considered for the new neutralization framework. The first design choice refers to how residual are integrated into a company requirement in the lead up to the net zero year. According to option 1, company might either be required to or receive additional recognition for setting removal target to address projected emission. According to option 2, company proactively address residual emission in the net zero year with the option to address this either through additional abatement or removals. The second design choice is about how the minimum durability of removal is defined. Here again, there are two options. Option one, assume a gradual transition approach in which a share of durable removal gradually increases. Option two, assume a like-for-like approach in which the durability of removals is matched to the atmospheric lifetime of the gases. In this option, company will either be required to or receive additional recognition for introducing interim removal targets. There are two main steps that companies need to take to determine the volume of removal needed for interim targets. Step one involves determining scope 1 residual emission at the net zero year. Each company, net zero residual, will be dependent upon their sector-specific residual emission allocation. In step two, companies multiply their net zero residual by an interim removal factor, or IRF, for a given milestone year to determine the volume of removal needed by that year. The IRF, importantly, is set by the SBTi and is based on IPCC pathways for required scale-up of removal in the lead-up to the net zero year. The results, as the right-hand side graph shows, is a series of interim removal targets which cumulatively lead up to the total amount of removal needed to neutralize emission in the net zero target year. In this option, companies address the residual emission through additional abatement or removals, or a combination of the two. In this case, the steps are as follows. Companies identify their scope 1 target pathways based on cross or sector-specific pathways and the volume of removal allowed as determined by the IRF. Companies mitigate their scope 1 emissions. Specifically, gross emission must be reduced at least the level of their SBTi assigned emission pathway. Then additional reduction beyond this can be achieved through further emission cuts, removals, or both. Importantly, the maximum volume of removal allowed in this option is the same as the volume projected by the removal target that has been presented in option 1. Two methodologies are being considered to determine the minimum durability threshold of eligible removals. Carbon removal solutions that meet or exceed this threshold qualify for inclusion in the targets. Here, a key concept again is the interim removal factor, IRF, which set the maximum amount of removal required or allowed every 5 years and is informed by the minimum durability threshold. Here again, we have two options for consultation. In option 1, called the gradual transition approach, net zero residual are reported as a single CO2 equivalent value. A single IRF is used, but is split in the share of novel versus conventional removals. The share of durable removal increases over time. The second option proposes a like-for-like approach, where net zero residual are split across individual greenhouse gases. Each greenhouse gas has its own interim removal factor based on its atmospheric lifetime. Durability of removal is matched to the atmospheric lifetime of individual greenhouse gases. In this option, there is a single IRF based on the growth rate of removal in the IPCC 1.5 pathway. The share of novel removal with geological storage increases over time in line with IPCC 1.5 pathway, but conventional removal with land storage still make up a substantial amount of the total. Companies apply the IRF to the expected residual emission in 2050 to determine required removals and associated storage type in each milestone year. In this option, companies split their expected net zero residual into 4 individual greenhouse gases: carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and sulfur hexafluorine. Companies then apply a specific IRF, which is based on the atmospheric lifetime of each gas, to each of the residual volume and for each milestone year. Companies will need to then set an interim removal target in CO2 equivalents. Finally, company will need to address this removal target with removal of appropriate durability matching to the atmospheric lifetime of each gas. The consultation will aim to resolve 3 open issues for residual emission topic. Firstly, our residual emissions are integrated into a company requirement prior to the net zero year. And as shown above, the standard presents 3 design options for consultation. Secondly, how the minimum required durability of removal is determined in the lead up to the net zero and in the neutralization year, with 2 options presented. Finally, what criteria or certification will be required for removal in order for them to count toward the company interim removal targets. As we have reached the end of this presentation, I'd like to thank you for watching, and I encourage you to submit your feedback during the consultation phase. Stakeholder inputs is critical for refining the standards.